There's a Rubik's Cube lie that is spreading across the entire world. Let me show you a video of it.
This is one of the best kept secrets on how to solve the Rubik's Cube. I believe the reason this method has remained so secretive is because the method is so simple that the Rubik's Cube would no longer be a mystery. Using only 2 moves and repeating those moves, you can pick up any Rubik's Cube starting in any position. Just by repeating these 2 moves, solve the cube. All you have to do is start in any position and move the left side counterclockwise 1 and then move the front clockwise 1. And as long as you repeat those moves over and over, the cube will ultimately solve itself.
Now this is a bit misleading because he's wrong. You can't solve a scrambled cube using these 2 moves because you're only turning 2 sides. But this massive chunk is completely untouched. So when you scramble your cube and it's scrambled, you're only turning those 2 sides and you're not touching the rest, which means they will remain unsolved. Now to be fair, he did address this in the description, saying that you must start at a solved state. But a lot of these other videos that are teaching the same method or something similar do not say this and say that this method will work completely on any scrambled cube, even though they started from the solved state. This can give people a negative view on speed cubing because it's seemingly very easy to do, even though that this will never work. The first mention of this lie on the internet is the video I showed you at the beginning, but since then tons of other videos have been uploaded sharing the same lie and spreading it even more. This lie has reached all platforms of the internet, and I think it's pretty nice that cubers are now taking over these platforms and debunking this myth. Now something that's obvious but you wouldn't really think of is that this trick doesn't just work on the 3x3. It works on puzzles like the 4x4, 5x5, and even some you wouldn't think of, like pyramids, cube, and even clock. But speaking about the trick, how does it actually get back to solved state? Well, I didn't know, so I had to ask ChatGPT. Here's what it said. On a Rubik's Cube, any sequence of moves or algorithm repeated enough times will eventually return the cube to its starting position because of the finite number of possible configurations the cube can have. Here's why this works. 1. Finite configurations. A standard 3x3 Rubik's Cube has 43 quintillion, specifically, that number, possible configurations. While this is a massive number, it's still finite. This means if you apply the same sequence of moves repeatedly, you'll eventually revisit the same configuration in a cycle. 2. Periodic nature of algorithms. When you perform an algorithm, a set sequence of moves, on a solved cube, it begins to cycle through various states, eventually returning to the solved state. This is because each algorithm essentially represents a closed loop in the space of possible configurations. Once it reaches the solved state, it starts the cycle again. So if you repeat the algorithm long enough, it will eventually come full circle. 3. Group theory. Mathematically, the moves of a Rubik's Cube form a structure known as a finite group in group theory. This means that for any set of moves, algorithm, there exists a power number of repetitions that will return the cube to its initial configuration. Each algorithm has a different order or number of repetitions needed to return to the start, depending on how it scrambles the cube. For example, consider the simple algorithm OR U or prime U prime, which is the basic right trigger. If you repeat this specific sequence of 4 moves 6 times, the cube will return to the exact configuration it started in. Not all algorithms have such a short cycle, but this demonstrates the periodic nature of these sequences. Now here's where it gets interesting. While it doesn't mean any random moves will solve the cube. While repeating an algorithm eventually returns the cube to its starting position, this only applies to that specific sequence. Random moves or unstructured scrambling won't necessarily solve the cube because they don't follow a specific pattern that cycles back. Structured algorithms are specifically designed to manipulate certain pieces in a controlled way, which is why they're useful in solving the cube. So it turns out that trick is an algorithm, a 2-move algorithm, which eventually leads to the solved state if you started on the solved state. And the reason it comes back is because there's a finite amount of possible combinations of the Rubik's Cube, specifically 43 quintillion, which is, a very big number. But this also begs the question, how do you actually solve the Rubik's Cube? So let's see how it's done. But before I start, this is just an overview, not an actual tutorial. So let's get into it. You start out by making a white cross. After the white cross, you make the white corners, which finishes the white face. After that, you do edges, which finishes the first 2 layers. And now you're just left with the last layer. First, you make a yellow cross, then you match the yellow cross, then you put the yellow corners in the right place, and then for the last step, you turn them so then they're facing the correct way. That's the beginner version. If you want to see the other 4 most popular Rubik's Cube methods, check out the video in the top right corner right now. If you actually want a Rubik's Cube tutorial, I have a cubing business called Cubiclo. At Cubiclo, we provide the most efficient Rubik's Cube tutorial there is. It comes with a Rubik's Cube, a tutorial, and at the end of the tutorial, a QR code for a video. This product is currently only shipped in Ireland, but don't worry, if you want to buy this product outside of Ireland, we also have a cheaper product called the digital tutorial pamphlet, which is the same thing but without the Rubik's Cube. So it's not delivered physically, it's delivered digitally because it's just a digital file. It's the same tutorial with the same QR code at the end, just without the Rubik's Cube. The Cubiclo solving bundle is really good because it's under the price of a normal Rubik's Cube you'd find in a shop, but we don't just provide a Rubik's Cube that's way better. We also provide a good tutorial and a good video tutorial as well. If you want to find out more, the website link is in the description. So stop trying to cut corners with these lazy lies and instead get the Cubiclo solving bundle or the digital tutorial pamphlet available on the website in the description. Thank you for watching. Watch another video on the screen. Bye bye.